This is the back of the case. Now that we've done the motherboard, we're going to want to install it. So first, let's open this guy up. Let's take off the thumb screws. Put the side panels aside. We don't want to scratch them up. They are beautiful. And so now, before we put in a motherboard, we want to put this guy in. This is the I/O shield for the board. We want to match that up. Grab the board. Since we know this is how the board's going to go. Alright, so now we know this is the way we want the I/O shield on the back of the board. So now we put the board down very gently. Alright, and slide this guy in. I say slide only because I've put this particular one a billion times. Some of these take a lot of work to push in. If you feel like it's rough, you're probably still doing it right. Now, this case states that you can put an SSD in the back of the case. So now, let's give that a try. Let's see what happens. So let's take off these now. These panels weigh like 5 or 10 pounds or something. I don't have a scale, but they feel like they're made out of good quality. Good quality parts. So now let's see where we could put these. The instructions unfortunately don't give you good information. They just tell you can, but they don't tell you how you can. But they do say put it in before you put it on a board. So I'm thinking on one of these slots, yep, like that. And like that. That seems pretty weird, but yeah, that is actually the way they want you to do it. So let me grab the screws. Here they tell you what every single screw does. Nice touch. So they have screws and they have spacers, which I'm thinking it probably would be a better idea to, when I put the SSD here, to put a spacer back there. You don't want this touching the back of the case and short-circuiting it, doing something like that. So I'm going to put a spacer. Let's see. These are the SSD screws. There's 32 pieces. Looks like 32. And now for the spacers. So it looks like for this one there, you don't need a spacer. For this one you do. This one is flush. These three are flush also. I'm just installing lightly with my fingertips. Alright, so I'll put one in here, and here are the plugs. Alright, so now we've installed the SSDs, at least physically installed them. We still need to connect them and everything. I'm going to get to the cabling when everything's already in. So now we're going to want to put the standoff screws on here. And Fractal Designs did a cool thing I've never seen before. Here's a typical standoff. Hex head, and then down here the screw itself. Then they give you something that looks like a thumb screw, but it's hollow. It goes right here, and you use that to screw it in. I think that's an amazing idea. Typically you need a special screwdriver, you know, to put in the screws here and all that good stuff, and up here. You don't need to do that now. They give you a special screwdriver for it. We'll go ahead and put them in. I know you're typically going to want to, you know, put it here and match it up. Some motherboards give you a little map, a little layout that you can put here that has exactly where these screw holes are. I've already, again, installed this board a bunch of times, but so I know one goes here, one goes here, one goes here, one goes here, here, one goes here, 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 and here. There's a bunch of other little screws. Those are for different types of motherboards. Some motherboards have a second one right here. This particular one only has one right here, right in the center of the board. Again, all boards are different. Let's go ahead and put these standoffs in. Screws in pretty easily. The nice thing about it, it doesn't let you over torque the screw or the standoff because you don't have a whole lot of room to do that. So they go in pretty tight, but not too tight as to strip the screw or the threading. Alright, that's the easy way to do it, possibly easy way. You can also attach it to your screwdriver. It's pretty good. Just go over after everything, just tighten it a little bit more. So now to the motherboard. This box says 9 motherboard screws. These are 9 motherboard screws. We're going to go ahead and use them. First, take the board. Just lay it down gently right here because we're going to need 1 screw. Now, one thing I've noticed I don't like about this case, but it's not a huge thing. Another case I've tested in the past, right here for this screw itself, rather than having a standoff, it had kind of a reverse standoff so that you have something to put the board in there and you don't need both hands to hold it in there. This particular case, you need to hold everything in place. Not a huge deal, just not the greatest for convenience sake. So, got my screw here. Now put the board up here. Alright, so first screw, not tight. You don't want to screw any screw too tight, but you want to have them snug. And just to show you the reason I put the CPU fan this way, it's sucking air through here, blowing it out here, so that I want this fan to suck the hot air and blow it out. You may want to turn it this way so that it's sucking the hot air, which hot air rises, sucking the hot air out and blowing it out through here, these 2 fans, which is an afterthought for me. I should have done that. Seems like a better idea, but either which way, I'll leave it like this. It works. Last thing you want to do when building a computer is have to go back and redo your work, but it does happen, so don't feel bad if you do. I'm already loving the contrast of the board and the case. The board is kind of a black board, and the way it's contrasting with the white background and then the black accents. Looks pretty nice. And since thankfully it does have a window, and I'm the kind of guy that likes to look inside my computer, I'm set on that part. Alright, so motherboard's in there. No cabling, so we're not totally done. So one thing that never bothered me, but apparently did bother others in my previous review. So I have two opticals, which for some people is a huge issue to begin with. Most people don't want any opticals. Some people don't want to see this all the time. And they ask for covers. I can understand they want it to look pretty. This one gives you a little door. Right here has the hard drive light, the indicator, or that could be the power light, one of the two. But either way, for here, whoops, it's not supposed to come out like that, but either way it came out. Slide that out, push it here, see that opens up and lets you pull that out. Most people only have one optical. I have two opticals. So you want to take this out. Alright, so we got that finally out of the way. Here is just the CD DVD writer. Slide it in place. Unfortunately, there is no locking mechanism. Kind of a downfall. So you're going to have to see if it's flush when you're screwing it in. Not 100% toolless, but pretty toolless to begin with. We're up here. So now you just want to match up with your thumb to make sure that it's perfectly flush. And for this particular one, I'm using the SSD screws. It only needs two on one side. I'm going to need to put two on the other. I'm going to be doing the other one. The bottom one is a DVD-RW. The top one is a BD-RW. Top one writes Blu-rays, DVDs, and CDs. And the bottom one writes DVDs and CDs. Already I'm seeing that the opticals are not 100% flush with the case. Not a huge deal because they give you a cover anyway. You can't see them. But if I open it up, you can see them there. You may not be able to tell they're flush. Let's see, maybe. So, yeah, right here you can see they're not perfectly flush. So let's turn this guy around. Let's go ahead and do the other side real quick. Ooh. Good paint. I almost scratched it. Last thing I want to do is scratch this beautiful paint job. You guys can't tell from looking at it because I know I couldn't from the pictures, but it really does feel like very thick, nice paint. Possibly even automotive, but I haven't read that just yet, so I don't want to say that it is. If you guys notice right here, that's the back of the board. These are the pegs I used for the CPU cooler, the CPU heatsink. So sometimes, it's happened to me quite a few times. Maybe it's happened to you, maybe it hasn't. Sometimes you'll install the board, cool, I'm ready to put everything, and then you realize, or maybe when you're done, you realize, I forgot to install The CPU fan. In this instance, that's okay because if you forget, you can just put it in afterwards because there's no metal here blocking it. That's also good for liquid cooling. Some liquid cooling units, most have a little plate in the back. We're pretty much done back here for now at least. Let's go back to the front. Right here we have something that I don't like myself, a particular problem. You have more space for hard drives here, hard drives here. I only have 3 hard drives aside from the SSDs, but thankfully they've fixed that by allowing me to put my SSDs in the back of the motherboard. So I really only need 3 drives. The problem with the way they have these drives is the fact that there's a fan right up here, and there's a fan right here. Let me show you the fan. There's a fan right here, and a fan right here. Alright, so you're getting air over the hard drives and a little air through these little slits. That's all cool and everything, but you would get a lot more airflow if this were unobstructed. So they do give you the option to take off this screw here. There was a screw here, but I already took it out on the unboxing video. And then you can slide this out. Comes off very easily, even easier the second time around. So right here. Now right here you have a spot for a fan. Right down here there is a fan already. Typically they want you to have this one as your main drive, being as it's a little bit harder to unscrew this cage as the screws are on the bottom. Which is good because I want to put a fan in here to blow air all over my components. Keep everything nice and cool. I think this is 140 millimeters. Alright, I think that one's 120. That's not going to fit. And this one, perfect. Alright. This fan right up here is blowing air in over all the components, or mainly the hard drives. The reason I know that, and this is typically, well, first off, they say the front are for bringing air in. But, you know, if you have a fan in your hand, sometimes you might be like, which side blows in? Sometimes along the sides, they have a little arrow indicating, you know, the airflow. This particular one doesn't have it. But that's okay because I can already see how this one is placed. This one is placed with the frame on the inside of the case. So, to match, I'm going to go ahead and put mine in there. Okay. Alright, so now I have 2 fans blowing nice cool air in. That's a great little feature there. Most cases have it again, but some are blocked by this hard drive cage, which thankfully I can remove. That's a great feature on this case. We're going to want to pop in these hard drives. So the way these come out is you squeeze these little guys in, slide it out, and now you can pop in 3 hard drives. Alright, so let's put in the first one. They do have in every single cage rubber grommets to control the noise that obviously hard drives have when they spin up and when they spin down. You're going to hear, you might hear a little humming. These little rubber grommets will help get rid of that. So bottom of the hard drives typically have little screw holes, and you just screw that guy in. There you go. Right here, whoops. Right here, right here, right here. And I've already done this one. So I'm just going to go ahead, start it off by hand. And like I mentioned before, if you don't want to put your SSD in the back of the case, here they give you the little screw holes for SSDs as well. The screw holes are pretty standard. Of course, not everybody follows the standard. So for your sake, hopefully they did. But again, they may not. These Kingston ones did follow the standard, but they're in the back of the case. Alright, so the first one goes on the bottom. Click. There you go. It's in. So now number 2. And you can plug it in any way you want to. The SATA ports going outwards to the back or in the front. I like to do it out in the back because I like to hide my cables. Hiding cables, you know, this is the kind of work I've done for years. I like to hide cables. I've done them for reviews. I've done them for personal builds. Hiding cables is also great for airflow. The better the airflow in the case, obviously the better cooling you get. You don't need to make it pretty, but the prettier it looks like on the inside of the case, the better airflow you get. Typically, you want to do what makes sense. All 3 drives are installed. Again, physically, not with the cables or anything like that. That's coming up next. So now we're going to install the power supply. Alright. This is a partially modular power supply. Modular power supplies are great because you don't have to deal with the cables until you want them there. Alright, and now the power supply screws. They're typically the hefty hex head ones. There you go. Some cases have power supply on the top. Some have them on the bottom. Preference where you want them. Doesn't really matter a whole lot. Now, so typically cases will suck air in, you know, to cool the insides of the power supply. So if you want to have the fans facing the bottom of the case, you want to make sure that the case has some sort of filter because you don't want it sucking in dust. You can have the cleanest house in the world, but you're always going to have dust under your computer case. As I was mentioning, this one has a filter that goes, here's the power supply, that goes where the power supply goes. So it's not going to suck in dust. And then to also help the most airflow go in, it has feet so that way it has some breathing room. It's not just flat on the table. We're pretty much done with the build itself. We have to put the video cards, which would go in this slot and this slot. But I want to take care of a few pieces of cabling first.